Today we're going to talk about Workbook 3A, Exercise 9. In the textbook it's pages 26 and 27, and this is the last day that we're working on addition, in this section at least. And what you'll notice in Singapore Math is on the last day of a topic, we stretch our brains and stretch our brains. We make sure we really understand what we're doing, and then we change topics. And so, be ready to stretch your brain today. I hope you've been practicing doing the math like we've been talking about from left to right, and that's a good way to think about math and to teach yourself and practice doing math. On page 26, the first problem asks us to find the sum of 1,266 and 2,355. The book shows the pictures. The book shows the vertical addition. I'm going to continue showing it kind of the way that I've been showing it without drawing all the pictures because we're stretching our brain and helping. But certainly look in the textbook on page 26 for the visual idea of what's going on. If I add 1,000 and 2,000, I'll have 3,000. I'm always going to look at the hundreds and see if I'm going to make another 1,000, because if 10 hundreds makes 1,000. I don't have 10 hundreds. So I'm going to call that 3,000. The next thing I'm going to do is consider my hundreds. I have 200 and 300, but look at the tens place. That tens place is going to give me another 100, because 5 tens and 5 tens makes 100. So instead of just 500, I'm going to write down 600. Now I'm going to consider the tens place. Don't forget, I just have one 10 now because all the other tens were used to make 100. But I do have enough ones to make 100, because 6 and 4 make 10. I said enough ones to make 100. I meant to make a 10. So I have the one 10 left and another 10. That's two tens. And then in my ones, what I have remaining is 1. So the answer to this problem is 3,621. If you watched the recording that I did for the last exercise, you heard my analogy of walking and crawling. It takes me quite a bit of time to talk through how to do that. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, wow, if I just wrote it this way and added 11 ones, 12 tens, 6 hundreds, 3 thousands, that was faster, wasn't it? If I say every step, it is definitely slower to do these. But what you'll find as you practice them is that you will look at problems, your mind will go over it from left side to right side, and you'll say to yourself, in this problem, I have 1,000, I will have 5 hundreds, I will have 2 tens, and no ones left over. And by looking at it left to right, I can just write that down. Now I've practiced more than you, right? So you would expect me to be faster at it. But if you will practice working on your math skills this way, you'll find that you'll go faster with left to right than you would if you try to write it down. I call this right to left addition. That's actually slower than left to right once you've practiced left to right and you get really good at it and your eyes get in the habit of seeing it and your brain starts thinking about it a little differently. I'm going to keep saying out loud what I think about, and you can always pause the recording, try it on your own, and see if you do it right by checking your answers. When you look at letter B, do you see 8,000 and not enough hundreds to change that? So I write down the 8,000. When I look at the hundreds, I see 8 hundreds and not enough to change that. I'm sorry, 800, but there is enough to change that, so I'll have 900. Now when I changed the hundreds, it's because I gave 4 of those tens and 6 of those tens away. So now I just have 1 10, but I look at the ones and I have enough to change that. So I'll have 2 tens. And then when I look at the ones, all of those were given to the tens, and I have 0. You do have to be careful. Look at letter C. When I add the thousands place, there's not 1,000 over here. You can't combine this 700 with the 5,000. But I have 5,000 and I have enough hundreds to change another 1,000, so that's 7. When I get rid of the hundreds, I have 1 left. My tens place will give me enough for another 100, so that's 6,200. When I think about those tens, if I gave 3 away with the 7, then I have 5 tens left. I do not have enough ones to make a 10. So that's 5 tens and 8 ones. Now, this is an interesting one. When I look at my thousands, I have 7. When I look at my hundreds, I have 9. But it occurs to me that if I had another 100, then I would have another 1,000. So I actually have to take a third glance at my tens. And I realize that the tens are going to make another 100, and the hundreds are going to make another 1,000. So the muscle in that brain of yours is going to keep on stretching. I now have 8 in the thousands. I'm going to remember I used the 9 and the 1 to go with these to make 10. For the 10 tens made the 100, so that made the 1,000. So I don't have any hundreds left over. I have 3 in the tens place, and my ones don't have enough to make another 10. So that'll be 3 tens, 7 ones, 8,037. So you have to be a little bit careful when you have a 9 for the next number, because it might pop up and be a 10 and change that thousands place. All right, so let's look at letter E. I have 7,000, but I also already have 1,000, so I'm definitely going to put an 8 in my thousands place. The 1,000 made 1,000, so I don't have any hundreds left unless I have 10 tens, which I don't. I only have 8. So I'm going to have 0 hundreds. In my tens place I have 8, but look at those ones. There's another 10 lurking in the ones. So instead of 8 tens, I'll have 9 tens. And when I use 6 and 5 to make a 10, I'll have 1 left over. See how important it is to think about tens? All right, last one. On this page, we do have some more to do on the other page. 4,000 and 2,000, and looking at the hundreds tells me I'm going to have 7,000. When I made the 7,000, I have 3 hundreds left. I do not have enough tens to change that, so I will have 7,300. When I look at my tens, I have 7 tens, but I do have enough ones, so I'm going to make that 8 tens, and the ones that I have left over will be 2. 7,382. Pretty nifty, I think, to be able to do math that way. At the top of page 27, we do more. I believe on this one it's a little bit more complicated. Again, this is the most complicated it's going to be. I challenge you to do your very best to stretch your brain and think about all of these from left to right. Find the sum of 3,589. It would be a lot of work to draw this out every time for every problem. That's not what we're trying to do, but it is a good idea. I do want you to see what we're doing. 3,589, I drew that in brown. That's 3 in the thousands place, 5 in the hundreds place, 8 in the tens place, 9 in the ones place. In 2,443, I drew out in purple. And so if we're trying to add these together, clearly I have 5 thousands. But since I have 9 hundreds, I better check. And sure enough, I can take 10 of these tens and bring it over here to make another 100. And then I'll have 10 of these hundreds to bring over here and make another 1,000. So when I add these together, I have 6 thousands. Now my hundreds all went away, so I have no more hundreds. I currently have 2 tens, but look, I have 10 ones that can come over and make another 10. So I have 3 tens, and then I have 2 ones left over. One other way to think about this, do you remember when we talked about 100 is the same thing as 9 tens and 10 ones? Remember that? If you look at these numbers, notice that I have 9 hundreds and more than 10 tens. That's going to make 1,000. 1,000 is the same thing as 9 hundreds and 10 tens. So if you watch for that when you're adding, if your next number is 9 and you have a 10 after that, then your number you're working on is going to go up. Look at the letter A on number 9. 4,697, add 1,316. 4,000 and 1,000 makes 5,000, but I have 9 hundreds and I have 10 ones. That's going to give me another 1,000. So instead of 5,000, I'll have 6,000. And notice this hundreds place, I have 9 hundreds plus another 100 is going to be 10 hundreds. It's going to be exactly 10 hundreds. I'll have no more hundreds left. Then when I look at the tens column, the 9 and the 1 were exactly enough to make that 1,000. And so I look at the ones column, 6 and 7. From there I can even say 6 and 7 is 13. 6,013 is that answer. So I did a little bit shorter. It's kind of the realization that 469 tens and 131 tens is exactly 600 tens. I'll write that down. 469 add 131, and this is how many tens I have, right? Do you see that I have 9 tens and 10 ones? That makes 100. That equals 600 tens, which is the same thing as 6,000. Sometimes you can glance at a number, reach in that toolbox that we're putting together, and pull out something and say, hey, I know what that is. And you don't necessarily have to do all the steps, but you've got to be able to have those tools in your toolbox to pull them out when it's convenient. And you have to practice getting better at using the tools. In this problem, I look at my thousands and I have 6. I look at my hundreds, I definitely have another 1,000, so that's 7,000. Noticing in my hundreds, if I gave away 5 and kept 3, and then I look at my tens place and I only have 9, but 9 is kind of that dangerous number because 9 might become 10 and make another 100. And in fact, that's what happens. Notice that I have 9 tens and 10 ones, and so that 300 is going to become a 400, and it's actually exactly 7,400. It's good to look at a problem before you start and see if there's any pattern in there that makes it easy. 87 and 13 makes 100 because that's 9 tens and 10 ones. So I have 35 hundreds and 38 hundreds and one more 100. Altogether I have 74 hundreds. Now since they're showing us that, look what I see on this one. 8 and 92 make 100. So I can think of this one as hundreds. There's 2,000 and 5,000 is 7,000. I'm definitely going to have another 1,000. So I'm going to call it 8,000. When I made that other 1,000, I gave away 9 and 1, which means I have 7 hundreds left, but the 92 and the 8 is another 100. So that's 8,800. And I didn't necessarily have to go all the way across from left to right because I noticed in the beginning that my 8 and 92 were going to make 1,000. Look what they've done on the last problem. I think they're trying to teach us to look for things to see how we can make it easy. So I have effectively 2,800 plus 2,500 plus another 100 is how I could think of that. Right? So how many thousand do I have? Well, I have 4 and definitely one more, 5,000. When I make the 1,000 using the 800 and the 500, I have 300 left, but there's 100 more than that. So altogether this answer is 5,400. If you just look at the problem and check it out real quick to see if there's any other ways to do it quickly, sometimes they're there. Now you're ready to do exercise 9.